All right, John, you're good to start the meeting.
All right, I'd like to get this meeting started. It's 4:31. Let's start with the call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. Tony, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay. Do we have a flag showing somewhere?
In your mind, it's indelibly installed in all our minds, the patriotic group that we are.
Okay.
I've got one
Pledge
here.
allegiance
To
the
flag,
flag.
United States of America,
and to
and to the
the
republic for which it stands,
One
one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty
and justice for all.
for all. God bless America.
Yes, stay healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Okay, Telesco, you want to do a roll call? Or can you see from the screen? Or would you like me to point out who the members are and the guests so far?
Yeah, I'm all right. I can see everything.
Okay, you got myself, Tony Mobilia, John Pinto, Chris McDonald, Matt Gifford, and Alan Kibbe from the commission. And then you'll have Greg Scully and Jeff Stedman as consultants. Mr. Bartosh from Shellfish. Dean Martin. Well, that's okay. So now I'd like the guests to introduce themselves, Dean and Elizabeth and Grasso.
You go ahead, Liz. You can start off if you want.
Dean Martin, Grumman Engineering for web construction.
And Liz Suchy from Carmody Torrens.
You got Joe Grasso and Adam Blank are the other two.
Okay. Go ahead, Adam.
Adam Blank of Wassey, Rosen, Kweskin, and Kuryansky on the FCNW Water Street matter.
Okay. And Joe Grasso.
He might be muted.
Okay.
And
Joe
we have-
Grasso here for the LLC.
All right.
And when we have Joe Schneiderline from the Mayor's Water Quality Commission. Hi, Joe. All right, so I would like to thank everybody for coming. This is our first real web meeting. We're zooming it out. Hopefully it's either our last or second to last Zoom type meeting, because I miss being with you guys. But at the end of the day, this is the way. Oh, and Greg Scully is with us as well. I'm sorry, and Jeff. Dennis Santello just came in, another commissioner. It's a little different way of doing business, but I think we could be efficient this way as well. And who knows, in the future, maybe we'll try doing a couple of meetings a year this way when we don't have to. So right now we'll go into the application review, and I'll turn it over to John Pinto, Chairman.
Thank you very much, John.
Yeah, I'm going on mute. All those not on the committee should go on mute.
All right, the Alan should be with us. Chris, Willis, John Romano, Jeff Stedman, Greg Scully should all be with us present. All right, Steve Bartish from Shellfish. And then, of course, we have our guests. When we get to those points in the application review, we'll call their mic and have them discuss. The first item on the agenda we have is 12 Shorehaven Road. This is an application that we previously reviewed. And as far as we are concerned, the response that we had made back in last year regarding this application, along with Shellfish Commission's responses, have been, as I assume I'll have to talk to Steve about that, have been applied to this application. And there was really nothing new other than the compliance with the Harbor Commission's response to the applicant regarding the positioning of the dock and dock, I'm sorry, no vessel attached to the dock should be sitting on a.
Pinto, if you could turn your volume up, you're coming in real low.
Oh, is it? Okay. Let me see here. I don't know, is that better, John?
Yeah, slightly.
All right, I don't know what's going on here, but in any event,
That's better.
that's better. All right, maybe make a slight adjustment on the headphones here. All right, so the suggestion that I have with regard to this application, just sort of that we can get, is to give the similar response that we gave the first time, which involved that no vessel or attached to the dock or the dock itself shall sit on the bottom for any appreciable tide cycle. Other than that, as far as I know, the compliance has been made. And I'd like to just mention to Steve whether that has been also the case with regard to Shellfish Commission. Steve? Do you have any problems or concerns about that application?
So we submitted a consultation form on November 8th with just a few points saying that the total encroachment should not exceed the last pile pair on the floating dock to the immediate southwest. Again, no floating dock was applied for nor approved. Thus, 18-inch float stops aren't applicable. Standard stuff in terms of construction barges being removed at low tide to a mooring, and that these specs should be approved by the harbor master. We specified the standard state 5-foot right-of-way head clearance below the pier, and this would be just below mean high water. Importantly, we noted that these drawings from Mr. Hiltz were not official stamped surveys, and we recommended that a formal survey be done to determine the proximity of this construction to the nearby commercial shellfish bed. And that's all, John. Thank you.
Yeah, that they've had. Now, as far as I know, they have complied with those wishes.
I'm not aware that a formal survey has been done.
All right.
Well,
John, this is Jeff Stedman. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What are they asking of the Harbor Commission now? To amend their pre-application plans or?
No, this was we submitted the response to the pre-application plans, and
right.
according, as far as I know, according to DEP has reviewed that and has gone forward with that, and I have not seen any changes that had taken place.
The only thing that they did do, John and Jeff, is they shifted it from off the property line to the center of the property, but the schematics and the dock and the lift are all the same as they were before the shift. So and the distance as well.
Right. So there's no issue I don't see with the location of the pier, but what are they actually asking the commission to do? It hasn't gone out to a public notice yet. So they're amending their plans that were submitted to us in the pre-application phase, and they're asking us to say that we're okay with the amendments of the pre-application plan?
Well, that was my read on that, and as I said, that's perhaps what we should go forward with as far as our response to that.
And reiterate our support for the recommendations of the Shellfish Commission.
Shellfish Commission, that's correct. Yes.
And still reserve the right to review it when it goes out to public notice.
Notice, that's correct. So those are the three items we'll bring forward to the commission. Unless, John, you want to, since the commission members are here, do you want to sort of save some time?
John, it's at your discretion. You can have, when we have a quorum, you could vote this and get comments any way you choose.
Well, does any comment on that? And that will, as I said, that's the type of response we'll bring forward to the full commission.
Seeing there are no comments, I like to move that this application be approved with the comments that we've had before, moving forward, subject to all the normal standard nomenclature.
We have the language. Yes,
Yeah,
Jeff.
maybe, it's Jeff Steadman again, maybe instead of saying approve, we have no objection to the
We have no
modification
objection
of
for
the plans and
moving
reserve the
forward.
right to review the
Correct.
final application when it
That's
goes out
correct.
to public notice. And
Yeah.
we
That's
support the
correct.
recommendations of the Shellfish Commission.
That's
Isn't that what I
correct.
said?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We have that language. We have that language already in place.
All right, all in favor?
All right. All commission members?
All in favor, raise your hand on the screen.
Yeah, if you want to do a roll call, it usually helps.
Yeah, that's better. That's better, Brian.
Actually, we do it Romano style. Any objections? Abstentions? Seeing none, the vote was unanimous.
We'll move forward. Okay.
That works.
I actually raised my hand in Zoom.
All right, yeah, the next
All right,
application.
next application is 310 Wilson Avenue. It's a CAM application by Webb Construction LLC. And I have well, the applicant proposes to redevelop a currently vacant property as.
John, your microphone again, move it.
Yeah.
All right, how about this? All right, maybe I don't know why it's going in and out, John. The applicant proposes to redevelop a currently vacant property as a contractor's yard for outdoor material storage located on, as a previously disturbed and developed area. Those are in quotation marks. The property is served by city sewer and water. The storage of materials will comply with FEMA minimum flood elevations. A new on-site stormwater retention system consisting of a catch basin and oil separator is proposed and is accompanied by other utilities and landscaping. I've asked Liz Succi to give a brief overview, and I think she has also with her Dean Martin, and I believe Mr. Grasso, who is the owner of the property. As I understand that the Webb Construction is the tenant of that property of Mr. Grasso's. So Liz, would you want to give us sort of a brief review of what we might want to consider?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize if the video feed on my end is not working, but it's probably better that you don't have to look at me for another 20 minutes. Thank you all for taking your time this afternoon to conduct this meeting. I hope that all of you and your families and friends are safe. And if any of you have had the unfortunate experience of being struck by COVID or family and friends, that folks are recuperating and recuperating quickly. Difficult time for all of us, but I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
As Dr. Pinto aptly mentioned, this is an application for a property that's about 2.3 acres. It's located to the south of Webb Construction's existing indoor rock crushing facility at 34 Meadow Street. The property.
Excuse me, Liz.
Yep.
Brian, could you share the screen perhaps with a diagram?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick and I'll share my screen.
It's a long, narrow strip that basically connects from that 50-foot right-of-way near where City Karting is, behind that all the way down to where the Grasso facility is further to the south. And it has been disturbed area used as it's gravelly soil for now. It's been used as access, but there are no structures on it. There's no drainage, and you'll see it right there. The 50-foot right-of-way is at the top of the screen where it says right-of-way, and that leads out directly out to Meadow Street. So if you were to take a right or left in from Meadow Street, you'd take that right-of-way to going in east direction, and you'd pass on the left side, you'd pass the parking lot and the structure where Webb Construction currently has its rock crushing facility. And a little bit beyond that, on the opposite side, to the right or to the south, is where the land is that is proposed to be developed as material storage. And that's being outlined right now.
I see.
Generally speaking, it would be storage of materials that Webb Construction crushes and processes at 34 Meadow. And that would be 3/4 inch crushed stone, 1.25 inch crushed stone, sand, and some other aggregate materials, all used in the construction trades. And it's just the materials that Webb Construction brings to their site, crushes on their site, and then uses in their own construction projects. It's not something that outsiders come in and they would then be able to just store materials back here. That's not the concept. I'll let Dean Martin get into it in more detail, but right now, as I said before, there's nothing on this property right now. It's vacant. There are some errant trees here and there. There are wetlands on the site. There are wetlands on the site. Tidal wetlands exist to the east. And right now there's no drainage facility. There's nothing. So whatever's there just sheet flows into whatever direction tidal low. A drainage system is proposed, and I'll let Dean get into that. But generally that's about it. The southerly half of the property, which is off to the left of your screen, for all intents and purposes, nothing's going to happen there, but it would be revegetated with over 100 plantings to kind of give it some natural buffer area and improve the wetlands and the water course, the wetlands and the habitats that exist in that area. That's kind of the long and short of it. Dean, can you step in and talk more specifically about best management practices, the drainage system, and the like?
Certainly. Dean Martin with Grumman Engineering. The proposed portion of the property that is to be developed is approximately 1/2 acre in the northwest corner of this 2.3 acre site. As you can see on the screen, the material storage area will be outlined with a concrete block, precast concrete block wall, totally encircling all of the material storage piles. Additionally, on the outside of the block wall will be planted a row of arborvitaes, 7 to 8 foot tall arborvitaes, approximately 6 foot on center. And as Attorney Suchi mentioned, currently this is just a dirt site. There's no vegetation to speak of whatsoever. There will be no regrading of the site as far as just approximately the first 50 or so feet off the entrance will be graded and will be paved with asphalt. And then we'll have a permanent anti-tracking pad. The drainage system, which is proposed, will be collecting runoff primarily from this asphalt area and running that through a oil separator unit into on-site retention. The remainder of the area, the block wall, will receive a treatment of filter fabric along the lower 2 levels, which will help in reducing sedimentation runoff from the property during rainstorms. Currently, as we stated, currently there is no drainage system on the site, and we're proposing to enhance the drainage to maintain the pre-existing runoff rates by our retention system, as well as enhancing any runoff by the use of the filter fabric on the wall surrounding the proposed material storage piles.
Dean, is that a structural engineered wall, or is that the typical mafia block wall?
It's a typical mafia block wall.
So Dean, let me ask you a question. John Pinto, application review chair. With regard to the aggregate that you plan to place on site there, again, is there potential for runoff of that material directly into the harbor, since there's not going to be any particular landscaping or grading that's going to be required, let's say for water runoff, et cetera, or perhaps flood?
Well, some of the material will range from coarse aggregate down to some material will be sand. So there will be some potential for runoff, and that's the reason for the filter fabric to be placed around the bottom of the wall, or around the wall. The inside of the wall, I guess as high as the materials would go, would be filter fabric, just to make sure that sedimentation does not flow through the wall.
Any concern as far as the flood, this being a flood zone?
Again, the same
Okay.
is true. We're actually looking into some options about the area that isn't in flood zone. And potentially raising that up and then compensating for the flood storage in the area to the south. That's something that we are looking at as that came up at the conservation hearing we had on Thursday.
Any other commissioners have any comment or concerns?
If I could add one other comment, I don't know if it was clear in the application documents that we sent, but a general permit from DEP is going to be required for the discharge of stormwater, and that process would start after all local municipal approvals have been secured. And there is an engineering firm that's on board and ready to move forward with that once local approvals have been secured.
Oh, that's good, Liz. All right,
Liz,
thanks.
does that then come back to us for that portion?
Yes.
of approval? Yeah,
Yeah,
This is,
in all likelihood, yep, by way of a referral from DEP.
right.
Okay, all right, that's good, yes. All right.
All right, so,
John, can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure, oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Jeff.
And I'm sorry, because I can't see what you're looking at. I have the drawing. This is Jeff Stedman. I have the drawing that you submitted. It's just a one sheet drawing. And at the bottom of the drawing, above the graphic scale, there's a label that says coastal jurisdiction line. And the line from that label doesn't seem to go anywhere. Is that just because I can't read the drawing correctly? Or I don't know if you have the same.
Oh, I see, yes, it says it's coastal jurisdiction line. That's
Yeah,
correct.
and
It's just
then
pointing.
there's a leader line that points to that doesn't point to anywhere. It just ends in the. You see what I'm saying, John? It
Yes.
doesn't point to a continuous line.
Right, that's right.
Uh,
Unless they
if I-
point, yes, I'm sorry, Dean?
If I may, Dean Martin,
Yeah.
that is just referencing that the coastal jurisdiction line is elevation 5.4, which is down in that area.
Okay,
It doesn't specifically point to the 5.4 contour, but it is
Contour, okay,
down in that
oh,
northeastern corner off the property.
yeah, it does say
was
that,
my
Jeff.
question. All right, so you're not proposing anything that's within that's waterward of the coastal jurisdiction line. The
No.
only approval all right. And then the other question that I think John had mentioned before, what's the where is 314 Wilson Avenue relative to this property? And I know we had looked at that several years ago, and there was an order of violation having to do with stormwater management issues. So has that violation been corrected? And what did you learn from that you applied into the design for this property?
Well, if I may interject for just a second, 314 Wilson Avenue is all the way to the left off the site where Brian is kindly showing you, all the way to the left of the page.
Right.
314 is where Crystal LLC, otherwise known as Grasso Construction, and Mr. Grasso can certainly chime in when he'd like, but it's off the site and to the south of this, and that property would be to the south of the generally 2 acres to be, or acre and a half to be vegetated between the edge of where the material storage is and the edge of the property line for this lot. It's my understanding that any DEP notices and violations were cured 3 years ago by the installation of a required fence with landscaping vegetation atop it. I don't know if there are any other issues right now, but I don't think there are. I think they've all been resolved.
Well, I wasn't.
Can you,
suggesting that
Grasso, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Joe.
So, yeah, the DEP violation has been cleared up. Like Liz said, there was a rain garden put in, there was an earthen berm. It's been all accepted and approved violation right now.
Yeah, I wasn't so much questioning. This is Jeff Stedman again about the status of that. Other than what did you learn? Did you learn anything from that, from preparing that property to protect stormwater that you could apply into the design for the best management practices here?
Well, you're talking about an area that's much smaller of an area that would require sedimentation control, and Dean has put in an oil grit separator and drainage that will mitigate any kind of silt that will go into Village Creek. He's put all the measures in place. An earthen berm, similar to what I've done, won't help in this situation.
All right. Does the city public, you mentioned, Liz, that you had a conservation hearing on this. Did the Conservation Commission have any recommendations for best management practices that
The only,
that we should be aware of?
sure. We didn't have a hearing. We had an initial receipt of the application and preliminary discussion with the commission. I don't believe the outgrowth of that is going to be a public hearing. However, the commission had some questions very similar to the questions you've raised. Concerns about how do you handle the materials that are stored during the flood, the design and materials for the stone wall and the features underneath and within. Those were generally the comments that the Conservation Commission. They also were curious about what type of materials would be stored. Brian was at that meeting, and Brian, I think those were the three issues that they asked more questions about.
Yeah, they're more limited to just looking at the wetlands. So the fact that this doesn't have any wetlands that run through, it's just through the upland review area. So that's kind of what they just kept focusing on.
And when this is Jeff Stedman again, when is a hearing scheduled by the Zoning Commission yet on this?
The first review and receipt by the Zoning Commission is scheduled for May 20th, I believe. And the earliest date for a public hearing would be on or about June 4th, perhaps?
Yeah, whenever their first June meeting would be the earliest the public hearing can happen.
Okay.
This is Chris McDowell. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, sorry. My Zoom cut out, so I called back in. So
okay,
I apologize if I asked for any repeat information. So the runoff from this site, is it 100% collected and gone through the city sewer, or does it just get treated and discharged into the wetlands?
A portion of it gets treated and goes into an on-site retention system, and a portion of it is treated and then sheet flows overland. None of the runoff is going into the city's storm drain system. Everything is contained on site.
Okay, because my concern would be that if this is crushed rock, there's a likelihood of arsenic being present in it, and the arsenic being introduced into Village Creek is not a positive thing for the salt marsh of the harbor. That's one comment. My other comment is about the history of this site. Now, I'm a little familiar with it, but it says it was developed before, but this is just an empty area, correct? And it looks like it's been raised up. I went on Google to try to figure out where this was, and you go back over time, and compared to the city carting site beside it, where there's all the dumpsters are stored, you can see it being raised up over the years. And my question is, what is the history of this site, and how is it raised, and was all that done? Was that done with permission? Well, how was that permitted?
I think, if I may respond quickly, I think it's just been over time. I can't answer to what the history is. We don't own the property. We're just a tenant. But it's my understanding that it has existed in its condition. There haven't been any structures on it. It's been used as a roadway of sorts. But when and how and to what extent it was raised, and any approvals or permission or things of that nature that were granted, that I can't answer. We don't have the history of that parcel, and we don't own it.
Right. Well, Crystal LLC owns it, right? They're a party to that?
They are the owner.
Okay.
If I may interject, this is Joe Grasso again. This area has never encroached into the wetlands at all. This area has been the same since 1995. This area was used as an emergency access road for fire trucks for Nash Engineering when the bridge was, there was an existing bridge, railroad bridge, and they've taken that out some 30 years ago. So it's always remained as an abandoned lot. That's all it is.
Right. But how about the fill? When was it filled?
That area, the entire roadway going back was not filled. That's been like that since 1995.
Not the roadway, the actual site we're talking about now, next to the city carting, that you can see on the aerial photographs that it's been raised up. It's higher than the city carting area now, which is not the way it was before. Definitely, that's the way it appears. And
Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing the actual pictures, but
And Chris, I have the photos that you had emailed up, just in case you can't see that.
Yeah, so the photo that we're looking at right now is from was that 8/10? Is it 2010, Chris?
Yeah.
And then there was a series of photos from 8/10, and there was 2012, and there was one in 2015. Yeah, it does look like definite grading had taken place just from the appearance of the.
Can't hear you, Doc.
I'm sorry?
We can't hear you.
Oh, as I said, looks like some filling in has taken place from the texture of the gravel, the texture of the photo.
yeah, and
So I mean, I don't know how to address that. Or who is responsible for that?
We can only or present to you that which the condition of the property as we find it, and the
Yeah.
improvements that we're suggesting, many of which would address concerns raised about how it's been used, how it will be used, how it'll be stabilized. But as far as the historic condition, how it was changed over time, that's not something for this application. And I don't know of any issues or violations or any other notices with respect to work that was done there prior to my clients becoming engaged with Crystal LLC to secure a lease for this portion of the property.
Oh, Liz, I certainly can appreciate what you're saying, and I think moving forward, I think if the current tenant has shown a decreased effluent runoff and also preparation for containing whatever material they have on site, and along with DEP approval, I don't see if there's a major issue right now.
Now, John, we approved an application 6, 7, 8 months ago about for another building that was going to be built and their drainage system. And this property has been, it's like day and night from what it was to what it is today.
Right.
I mean, this whole property's been cleaned up and done. It's tremendous to the lessening of impact.
No, I agree what you're saying, John. I'm saying just responding to the fact that they're certainly trying to put together best management practices for containment and retention of material before it flows into the harbor. So that's.
John, this is Jeff Stedman again. Liz, does your drainage plan? Do your drainage plans have to be reviewed by DPW and to comply with the MS4 program or whatever the city stormwater requirements are? Have you done that yet?
The entire application must be reviewed by Public Works, Fire, Water Pollution Control, the Water Department, and the application and supporting documents were referred over to those departments at the same time that they were filed with the zoning department. I think Public Works' review of the project and the reports and plans is still ongoing. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, that department and several others must review this application and issue sign-offs to us prior to the zoning commission acting on any application.
And another question, the general permit that you need from DEEP, you said part of that is for sheet flow, but is also a part of that for like a piped discharge into the creek? What is?
I'm sorry, as far as I understand it, the application for the general permit to DEEP would be for the discharge of stormwater. I have no other details other than we know we have an application that must be submitted, and that's going to be handled by Anchor Engineering, who is aware of the site, aware of the process, aware of what is being proposed. But I have nothing further on that. The Anchor Engineering hasn't started that process since we don't have approvals from the municipality from which we would then move forward.
I'm just wondering if that might have to include if you're collecting stormwater before discharge, whether the discharge would be through a pipe system, and if it is, would there be a requirement for monitoring the from time to time the effluent that comes out of that pipe from the site? Is that something that's typically included in in a general permit such as this?
I am not familiar with the requirements or the conditions that
Right.
typically are affixed to a general permit, but I can certainly find that out and share that with Dr. Pinto.
Yes, I'd appreciate that, Liz.
Sure.
Thank you.
You know, I don't know, I'll stop talking in a second, John, but I think that our major concern would be stormwater
Yes, that's
management
correct.
and protection of the
Yeah.
environmental quality,
that's-
including water
Right.
quality in Village Creek.
That's
And-
correct.
Right. Especially the fact that it's gonna flow through crushed stone. That is freshly crushed stone, not that's been, it's gonna be crushed next door and stored here. Correct? The web crushing facility is the adjacent lot. This is gonna be an outdoor storage for freshly crushed stone. And all that entails.
That is correct.
And I said I was going to stop talking, but I still am. But is this in the 100-year floodplain? I don't have the drawing now up in front of me. And are
Yeah.
there FEMA requirements that are applicable here that
Well,
have to be addressed?
That was the question that we had raised earlier too, Jeff. But I think, no. I think Dean Martin responded to that. Did you?
It's not in the 100-year floodplain?
Just the very south end of the developed area.
All right. Okay.
Wait, what's the? This is all at elevation 1112, and the FEMA flood zone in that area is. I thought that the environmental report, which was part of the submitted material, did identify it as being in the flood zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the majority of the property is within the flood zone, but the area that we're proposing to work on, only the southern approximately 45 to 50 feet are within the flood, or below elevation 11, right where the hand
But
is.
flood zone is, what's flood zone? What's the?
11.0.
Yeah, it's in an AE11. I guess it's the western portion of the lot, or is that the southern portion? Southern.
It's-
Thank you.
That's the southern.
Yeah.
Right. And
All right. Is there any further questions?
I do, John. This is Steve.
Yes.
Dean, if I could ask a couple of quick questions. So Steve from Shellfish, what's the anticipated lifespan of the silt curtains, and what would be the plans for its maintenance and or replacement? And then if I could follow up on that, I'd like to, sir.
They would have to be monitored. And what the contractor would do is after each storm, just go through and if there's any damaged portions of the silt curtains, they would have to be reattached to the walls. The area of the entrance would be, monitored, and if there's siltation built up on the tracking pads and that type of thing, they would be cleaned with, their bucket loaders or hand cleaned. I don't know if that answers your questions or not, Steve, but.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. And just in quick follow-up, and I realize this is more of a business type question, but will there be an off-season for this facility such that the material stored there could be tarped and prevent precipitation from going through it?
Well, there would be tarps on all the materials. Yes, that's part of the proposal, is that all the materials piles will be covered.
Yeah, and zoning does require that all piles are covered when not in use, by the way.
Thank you, Dean.
If I can add to that question, Steve, and it's probably maybe an unusual type of question, but again, going back to what Chris McDonald had mentioned, is there any option for example, heavy metal testing, for that matter, as to the type of debris or maybe the potential for debris or heavy metals flowing into Village Creek? Is that sort of on the agenda, or has it been proposed, or is that reasonable?
It's my understanding that Web Construction currently undertakes testing of the materials that they process in connection with requirements for DOT projects. And if you'd like us to provide you with more information on the extent, frequency, and the type of testing they undertake, I'm sure that we can provide that to you.
That would be sort of curious because, again, if there's an arsenic problem, there's a lead problem, especially flowing into the proximity, let's say, of Village Creek, I think that would be of concern because there is beaches there, et cetera, that, swimmers that might be potentially affected, just throwing that out as a potential question. That's not a problem, then so be it.
I'll provide you with more information on that from the client.
Can I interject here? John, following up on your comment, there are shellfish beds directly off of the Village Creek area,
I think those are all closed, aren't they?
but there's still shellfish beds and they are productive.
Yeah, the area north of Hoy Island or Cabbage Key, whatever that the small one. But as it opens up, and between Manresa and Wilson Point, there's a recreational shellfish area,
Yes.
and then once you get into deeper water, there's numerous oyster beds, least
Correct.
oyster beds between Tavern Island and Sheffield Island.
Correct. The other question I had is more a matter of structure, and Joe Grasso may be able to answer this because I don't know what they're going to have for a base under these piles of aggregate. This is soft area, and if too much mass is put on it, it might sink.
I don't know if Mr. Grasso's present.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm here right now. Again, just so you understand, this is Web Construction's application. Dean, you're there as well. I can answer this to the best of my knowledge. That road's been there since 1910, 1918, I think. So as far as further compaction on the site, you're not going to have any further compaction. It's never gone down over the years, and I don't think that's a concern.
Okay.
Do we have any borings in this area? Were there any borings done as part of the engineering study?
Again, I don't have any borings. No borings were done on my part. Dean, did you guys do borings?
We did not do borings. I don't believe that any were done at this point.
All right, well, perhaps in the interest of time, since there's going to be certainly a review of that site with regard to DEP's review of the site that you have to submit and zoning, et cetera, we certainly would wait on those applications to review and give further comment. Does any of the commissioners have any other issues with that?
But just
My only, I still didn't get an answer about how and when this area was filled in. I'm not talking about the road. I'm talking about the full width being raised up above the city karting site.
This is Joe Grasso again. I don't believe that whole area has been raised. It's been a roadway there, like I said, for a long time.
Sure, the roadway is quite narrow. This is a much wider area.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it. There is a mafia block wall, a concrete block wall between City Karting's property and my property.
Correct.
Whether that's been raised or not, I can't tell you.
Is it higher on one side than the other? Is it higher on one side than the other at this time?
I believe it is.
Yeah, because if you go back to the 2010 photograph I sent, you can see that the city karting dumpsters were put on, bridging across. They're in the location where the wall was added. So the mafia block wall was added, and at some point by someone there was fill added in to raise it up to the height of them, to the height of the mafia block wall. So my curious is when and how is this, filling in of an area adjacent to tidal wetlands, approved, and and how was that all done?
I couldn't answer that question right now.
No.
John, this is Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go on, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Just another question of Liz. Liz, the proposed use is consistent with the existing zoning of the property? You're not requesting any sort of variance to allow this to take place?
That is correct. Where there is no variance of the DBA, there's no text amendment, no zone change. This is a use that's currently permitted in this zone by special permit. The zone is industrial 1, and it allows contractors' yards and storage materials.
So the issue for the Harbor Commission, to maybe try to summarize this if I'm correct, is that the main concern is that you have a contractor's yard to store crushed rocks and it's adjacent to a tidal wetland. And the concern is to manage the site in a way that does not cause any significant adverse impact on the wetlands and on the water quality. And that's how I guess how we have to figure out how to craft our recommendation to that effect, but also leave open the opportunity to continue to review the proposal and provide additional comments at the time of when there's a public hearing process underway.
Correct, Jeff.
But I don't see that we'd have right now an objection to the proposal moving forward. But that's just my opinion. Subject to we'll continue to pay attention to this and the best management practices and talk with DEEP about it.
Right.
But how do we ensure that we can protect the wetlands and the water quality? And that's our main thing. We have to be confident that the proposed best management practices will do that.
Will there be a response to that, Liz?
Well,
in that application that you've applied for?
You mean in the application that'll eventually go to DEP?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to be handling that, so I'm not familiar with what the component parts are. But as I said before, I'm certainly happy to speak to the engineers who will be preparing that and submitting to see what the component parts are, what the standards are, what other information is necessary for DEP to review and act upon it. And I'm happy to share that with Brian and with you, Dr. Pinto.
Okay, I think that's fair enough, Liz. I think we can certainly move forward now.
Okay.
Any other comments quickly?
But what is the commission going to say in terms of a vote or a submittal or
just
to
as
the
just as
zoning
you
commission now?
Just as you outlined it before, Jeff, I think it would be sufficient for us to move forward with that to the full commission.
Express our comments and concerns, in other words, now.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we can put something down in writing. We'll get that over to Liz and and again with the idea that that additional information would be forthcoming, and that we certainly reserve our right to review that application in its final form.
I'd like to have my concerns noted.
All right, we could do that, Alan, certainly. And I think
This is Chris.
Yeah, Chris, I'm sorry. Yeah, certainly we can do that. I don't know how we can address that other than perhaps ask DEP if there has been any permit. I don't know or recall any permit coming before the Harbor Commission for any alteration in the elevation of that property. It certainly does look like, from the standpoint from those aerial views, that something was done. But again, with our comment of regard to what the current application involves, deals particularly with this project moving forward, with the best management practices that are necessary to protect the harbor. So.
I mean, the runoff goes in the harbor and through crushed stone, and the current situation is not that. So it's a net negative on the harbor.
Well, then how would you like to address that, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what is this? What is the remedy when do we agree it's a net negative on the harbor?
Yes, and as long as there's minimum effluent flowing into that harbor or none at all, if the company has made.
Well, Chris is saying the opposite, John.
Yeah.
Right now, it's an unimproved lot that's never been developed for anything other than a roadway. Fill or no fill, it's just been an empty lot without ever being developed. So I think that's a slight mischaracterization that it's a developed lot. Either it was wetland at one point. Apparently, it was developed as an access road. for Nash Engineering owned all that at one point, I guess, and developed it, pre-regulation probably. So that, that's that. But, so now it's being put into use as, storage for crushed stone. And the water is, and all the water is either being infiltrated or running straight off into the harbor.
Well,
Well, that's what's going on now. It's running off into the harbor.
But there's no crushed stone there.
There's no crushed stone there now, John. No, it's.
I get that, but there always going to be migration. This is coming from the property next door. They are approved for crushing. They have an indoor facility there now. There's
right,
always
and all the material,
different directions. I see this as an improvement because it's got a water retention system, and it's
improvement over what? Improvement over what exactly? Apparently it's just a virgin lot that was just a roadway. Webb next door does not have permission to store crushed material outside, is my understanding.
It
They
does.
have an indoor.
No, if I may interrupt,
Okay.
Webb Construction does have the approval as part of its permit from 2017 to have material piles outside, provided they're in a specific location as mandated by the zoning commission. They don't exceed a height of 20 feet and they're covered. So the same type of materials that are currently stored outside now would be the materials that are contemplated to be stored in that half an acre northerly portion.
But okay, so this site in and of itself is an additional location, additional material, and compared to the existing condition, which is a 100-year-old roadway, or whatever it is just virgin ground that is environmentally neutral at this point. And now we're introducing material being stored next to the, and my main concern is arsenic and other heavy metals being introduced into the water, flowing down. And, I'm also on the Village Creek Harbor Commission. We have to have our sediment tested. And if it comes up hot, then we have to pay triple the amount. That's an exaggeration, but we have to pay, it affects our dredging operation. It affects the shellfish beds. We'd have to dispose it as if it's hot. That's a whole nother burden that as well as the general health and welfare of the oyster bed further downstream of all this. So that's my concern, and that's why I see it as a net negative.
All right. Well, again, could those points be addressed in the sort of an environmental best management practices that Webb Construction plans to put together? I would be interested certainly to know whether it's going to add to perhaps heavy metal effluent into the harbor and affect in any way with regard to maybe periodic testing once in a while. I don't know if again that is built into that application or would be built into that application. To answer your question, Chris.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, is that something that you would like to bring forward?
Yes.
I mean, I think Liz, you alluded to that would be possibly to review that or to look at that.
All I can tell you is whatever the requirements are for the application for a general permit for DEP.
Okay.
The documents necessary for DEP to review that will be submitted. I don't know what the component parts are, but I can certainly ask the question of the engineers involved. Is something like testing for heavy metal effluent or other contaminants part of that process?
Okay. Well, we certainly add that to our comment and as certainly a recommendation. Chris, would you have any problem with that?
No.
All right.
Yeah,
So
I would think that portion of it is a separate process, and that's where Deep would be more intimately involved, and their requirements may be a little more stringent than.
Well, I don't know, John.
But the application that we're looking at right now.
But the runoff, John, and the drainage is an inherent part of what we're looking at. So
Yes.
you can't really separate them.
That's correct.
I'm looking at the drawing again. This is Jeff Stedman. where I made mention of the coastal jurisdiction line. And I'm sorry, looking at it on my computer screen is not easy for me because I can't see too well, but is there anything on that drawing that shows a discharge point for stormwater from the underground retention systems? Is there, I can't see anything there that would say.
No, there's no discharge. There's no point discharge from the
There's
retention.
no point from the retention systems. And one thing that would be, I think, a matter of course is that there would have to be some condition to assure perpetual maintenance of those under
There is a
subsurface
maintenance.
retention systems.
Yes, Dean Martin, there is an operations and maintenance plan report, if you will, that goes to the drainage analysis.
Right.
That has maintenance and, conditions which have to be maintained, adhered to.
Right. I saw that. All right.
Well, one approach, instead of saying that this proposal is consistent with the harbor management plan or inconsistent at this time.
No, we don't have to say that.
Is to transmit the comments and the concerns and that were discussed at this meeting, and then reserve the right to make a final determination of consistency during the public hearing process. But it's a use that's permitted, by zoning, and the question is how can we assure that the use doesn't result in an adverse impact on the harbor? And maybe there needs to be some sort of but anyway, that's my thought. Transmit the comments.
That's all we'll do. Is transmit
including Chris's comments.
That's correct. That's correct. We'll include that in the comment to.
Guys, we need to move this along because we have another whole meeting to do.
So we'll put some language together with regard to that. And I don't know. Should we take? I don't know, John. We need to take we can take a vote on the current language that we've developed so far to forward to the full commission, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
Forward.
Let's do that.
All right. So regarding those comments, we'll move forward with the full commission. If there's no objections, whether that we're going to address best management practices and certainly add to that Chris's concerns with regard to perhaps potential monitoring of effluent, wait for further comments from perhaps DEP, as well as providing comments from Shellfish. Again, I right now I don't have the words to put together right now for what we've discussed so far, but we certainly will again use our judgment from previous applications that we've had to submit and hopefully move forward with this application.
Yeah, and put that maintenance plan in that equation too, that they've submitted.
Yeah.
And also, at the end of the day, I think we need to move this forward, and I'd like to put a motion into play that with the language that we've talked about and discussions that we had be incorporated in our referral, and with the understanding that we have a right to look at it again with the deep application, and the client is on the phone with his attorney who'll pass it off and hand it off to the next group of engineers and attorneys, so they can have this all addressed when the next time we have to review the item.
All right. Well, if any objections to those comments, take a vote on that. And if not hearing none, we can move forward.
Any objections?
None.
No objections.
Any abstentions?
Okay,
Tony, are you raising your hand, Mobilia? Unmute Mobilia. Hold on, Tony. You're not unmuted yet. You may have to do it yourself. I don't know if
Brian should be able to do it as host.
Okay, go ahead.
My
Go ahead,
hand is
Tony.
raised. My hand is raised.
I know. Go ahead. You're recognized.
Okay. I raised my hand.
Oh, as agreeing.
As agreeing.
As agreeing, yes.
Okay. All right. We'll move forward. All right. We'll move forward with those thoughts.
All right. So with those comments, that application is approved.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's very
Thank
quickly.
you.
Liz, no, thank you very much.
No, my pleasure. Stay safe, everyone.
Mr.
You
Martin,
too, Liz.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz.
All right, thank you.
and Mr. Grasso. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. The third application involves, actually, the third, it's not an application, but the discussion of the conceptual plans that were put together by the DEP regarding placement of the vessels of the Maritime Center and the Seaport Association. We have not received anything in writing from them to really discuss. And again, we can just move forward with our usual comment until we have formal application in front of us or formal review. We did meet with the DOT on April.
John?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion to the group that we all chip in. If we can't get the city to pay for it, buy you a new microphone or a new speaker because you keep cutting in and out.
Yeah, that I don't understand why, John.
All right, now that's good. That was good for a second. So
All right,
try to
again.
keep it good.
All right, I don't understand why that's happening, but in any event. We had a discussion with DOT on April 22nd. They presented not only their original plan of placement of the vessels between the Stroffolino Bridge and the Walk Bridge project, moving it up about 87 feet forward toward the Stroffolino Bridge. And they discussed, again, the workmanship and the captainship of the two vessel captains with regard to their ability to maneuver in that area. The major comment that came out that we presented was the fact that we were only seeing one arm of this whole operation, and that we need to look at it in terms of a risk assessment proposal, where we see not only the functioning of the cranes, but also the positioning of the work barges and the work platform, as well as wind and tide action, as well as the flow of vessels in and out of that harbor area, rowers, vessels going in and out of the harbor, in conjunction with the action of those captains and their maneuverability of those two crafts. So again, we only heard from the Seaport Association and Maritime Association with Maritime Aquarium with regard to their willingness to go ahead with the DOT's plans. There are other plans put forward, but again, nothing substantially in writing with regard to what we need to do. So as I said, we have to wait further comment. And I believe they plan to have another meeting discussing the alternative plans. Is that correct?
Well, do we not have a meeting with them on Friday?
I think we do. Yeah, I haven't looked at that. That's correct. So I don't think there's really any action.
Brian, can you unmute Greg Scully, please?
Yep, give me 1 second to find his name. Right, great.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Greg.
you're unmuted,
Yep.
Greg.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's been our contention right along that no matter what they do, because they've asked us under the guise of, they want us to prove it, to do another test, which Greg and Bruce have already done. And they've proven that it's not a navigable area safely. And then also there's always been the burden of the 150-foot safety area that has to be maintained, which they do not have regardless of what. So, I mean, our position is, I don't think we would have to prove anything, re-stake, buoy.
No.
That was, their risk assessment is a good idea, which they always refuse to do, but it should have zero to do with what needs to be done with the placement of those two boats. The risk assessment should be for the cranes overhead, the potential and issues with the apartments and safety on the ground for boats.
Absolutely.
And rowers that are going through the area.
Yep.
That's where their risk assessment should be. It's our position, I believe, has always been that it's zero. It's not only our position, it's the Norfolk Police, it's the Harbor Commission and the Coast Guard's position that this area is not appropriate during the bridge. Go ahead,
so what's the issue? What's the issue to us now?
I'm sorry, who was
Is
that?
this a set? What is the issue to the Harbor Commission now?
Well, who is this speaking?
This is Chris. Sorry.
Oh, Chris. Right now, there is no issue until we hear further information Other than that, as what John Romano put forward, there's really nothing for us to act on right now, as I said, other than going forward with our full comment as we've had before.
Right.
What they're not doing is coming up with an appropriate plan for an alternative placement of those two vessels.
No.
So
like I said, last meeting that we had with them on the 22nd, the two gentlemen from the Maritime Center just stated over and over, they want to stay where they are.
That's correct.
They
that's
weren't
my
entertaining
concern.
any other plans. They just want to stay where they are. You know, the plans that they drew up, they didn't draw in the safety zone, whether it's 150 feet, 100 feet, or 125 feet. They had no drawings of that in place. And I know for a fact that with that in place, there's no way they're going to be able to maneuver those boats in onto the docks with that safety zone. So,
That's right. Well, again, we stand firm with our comment, and that is, as we've commented before, that area is not conducive for vessels that require passenger in that work zone. So.
But did we, at that time, did we know that the two vessel operators both thought that they could safely operate in that area?
yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah. During the meeting, they both said they wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but when we made our decision, when the Harbor Commission made their decision, do we have that information available to us? Because it seems like we're fighting against the people who know best how to operate a vessel in that location.
Chris,
Well,
you're missing one.
Again, have them come out and do a test run and see it. Let's get them both out there.
Chris,
well, they don't have to do a test run. They operate in there every single day.
Without barges and without a safety zone.
That's correct.
Well, then have them do that. I'm sure they'd be, if you said either you have to prove that you can do it or we're going to kick you out of here, then I think they would probably do it.
But Chris, the point is, even if they could do it, let's say,
right,
there's no safety zone that would be maintained. It's
no.
The numbers don't add up. So regardless, forget about maneuverability. Forget about the fact that they're working under ideal conditions. Forget about the fact they don't go out with strong winds. If they wound up with a wind kicking up and the radius that they would have to make their turns and to maneuver those boats, it is a risk, and it's especially a risk with people on the boat. So, and then they cannot maintain that 150-foot safety barrier. That's the real
the 150-foot safety barrier. They have to maintain that from what? They have to maintain 150 foot from
the barges and whatnot, and what? Right, because you're not stopping the flow of the traffic of the rowers and the recreational boats, and those rowers start at the break of dawn and they're there till sunset, all day through the summer, every day, 7 days a week.
Sure, yeah.
And they said they're going to plan their working around them. You can't. You've got the high schoolers that come out first thing in the morning.
Oh, sure, yeah, I get that. I'm just thinking in terms of the two vessels operators who want to remain in that location, and that we are. My inclination is to defer to the people who operate a vessel in there every single day, and whether they feel they can do it safely, they have the primary responsibility to their passengers.
Correct.
Yeah, but they've only operated under ideal conditions where there's no other vessels, no other craft, no other crane operation, nothing in that area. So again, I have no problem with the maneuverability of these two captains. But again, they have not, as far as we're concerned anyway, they have not done that in the face of vessel traffic, other than their own barge traffic, the cranes going around. There's just too much going on, activity. They have not done that.
It's such a tight area that they're going to be doing this construction in, and where they have in the maps where the barge is going to be, as we all know, it looks good on paper, but when reality kicks in, they may not be able to put it on paper. They may have to make adjustments, and the slight adjustments here and there are going to throw everything off. It's not a wide open area that they're working. It's they're in a box, basically, in a little box between two bridges and two shorelines, and it's tight.
Well, I'd like to bring.
Yeah, and I don't think, but I think they know all that. I don't think any of that is a mystery to them, and they're
right.
They're used, they're used to rowers. They're used to, they've been working on the bridge. They replaced the whole fender system 3 years ago, all summer long. Yep. I mean, there's, the dot.
John, can I make a comment? Jeff Stedman?
Yes.
Yes, Jeff.
The harbor master is responsible for safe and efficient operation of the harbor, and he has an independent role. He doesn't
Sure, I
make his decision because somebody says we want to do this because it works out best for us.
That's correct.
And
That's
the
correct.
Coast Guard also has an important role in this, and they're looking at it. And to answer address the question of how, when we made this decision, or the commission did, had we talked with the operators of the vessels, we participated in several meetings with the operators of the vessels going back several years. And in those meetings, the operators of the vessels clearly said that they had reservations about it, and we should have a plan B in case it doesn't work. And now we're in the situation where we're not trying to mess up their project and keep them from going. We're only looking at this from the perspective of public safety. And if we stay and say that this is our concern, we think it's an unacceptable risk, it has to be addressed somehow, and the DOT goes ahead with it and ends up getting approval, at least we've made a decision that we think is based on public safety, not the viability of two, water-dependent business or two operations. The other thing is we know nothing about what they're proposing for Manresa Island right now, if they're looking at that. So when we looked at that property down, the concept that they proposed for the North Water Street area, it's not clear whether that requires them to relocate the construction yard to another place such as Manresa Island, or if they're already looking at that, or whether that area is actually a viable place to relocate the boats. And the only reason that it's not, from the perspective of the vessel operators, is it's somehow going to affect the viability of their operation. So we talked about this a long time.
And Jeff, as a harbor master, I'm not asking these guys permission to let them stay there. It's by state statute, it's my decision if I allow this to operate of that. I'm trying to work with them and readjust it and whatnot. But under state statute, I have the say of safe traffic and the safety of the harbor. So if I deem it unsafe, well, then, that's the issue.
There was a similar, I don't want to say it's the same thing, but there was a marina proposal in Stamford a few years ago. And the operator said, oh, this will work fine right next to the O&G Industries. And the harbor master said, no, it's not. There's going to be an accident. And sure enough, there was an accident. And that was
that's right.
When the barge
the
ran
$1
over
million sailboat.
The $1 million catamaran, yeah.
That's
so
right.
you don't anticipate that an accident will happen, but we're motivated by public safety, not the viability of the businesses.
All right, gentlemen, let's. I think we can move this item forward. There's really nothing that the commission has to act on right now, other than to perhaps await additional information for reasons that, for courtesy, at least to listen to the DOT and listen to the other captains of that vessel with regard to maybe future plans or what they have. But right now, there's nothing for us to act on, and I'd like to move forward to item number 4, if no one has any objection.
No, that's fine.
All right.
No, please.
All right, so let's continue our discussion on item 4, and I think this is a conceptual plan that for redevelopment of the Water Street properties, and I've asked Mr. Blank from representing Byfield Architect to present what this conceptual plan is about, and perhaps address the commission on that.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, great. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. Adam Blank. I'm an attorney at Wassey Rosen. Bruce Byfield is, as you probably know, is a local architect, and Bruce and I have been working, officially we're working with one property owner, FCNW, which is the owner of 68 Water Street, which is, if you're thinking of from Washington and Water Street, they're the second property from the corner of Washington and Water Street on the water side. But we've also been unofficially working with about 5 or 6 other property owners as you go along Water Street out, I guess it's east. And so we've had some discussions with those property owners about they'd like to have some zoning changes so that they can develop their properties. at this point, we don't really, we've given you some sort of conceptuals that give you a sense of what things could look like. There's no sort of promises that any of this is what actually would come to be, but it's to give you a sense of the scale of development. And we're looking at this point, since there's no application to anybody, there's nothing for you folks to do, but we are hoping that you'll give us some feedback about sort of things that you'd like, things that you would be strongly opposed to, but some way that we can come up with something that you would hopefully support that would allow, they want to go, higher in terms of their development with the properties. We'd like to be closer to 4.5 stories. On the other side of the street, it's 6 stories. So it would be, the developments would still be less than what's across the street, but higher than what's allowed now. The density, meaning the number of units that could be put on each of these sites, we're asking, or we expect to ask for that to be increased to mirror what it's like on the other side of the street, which is the Sono Station Design District. And for what we're mostly interested from you folks too is what are some things that you might like to see on the water side of these properties that would help keep it consistent with your purposes and with some form of I guess maritime use that still allows the property owners to do something that will give them enough financial incentive to actually develop these properties. I did send you a letter. It was kind of hastily put together when you were nice enough to put me on this agenda. I don't know if you've all seen it. It was just dated from yesterday, but it kind of outlined some of what I've told you now with a little more detail on sort of what we're roughly thinking about. I think at this point, I'm happy to stop and get input from you or questions if you need more specifics about what we'd like to do.
Well,
yeah, Adam, Alan and Kibbe, for me, it's almost a non-starter in terms of what our management plan is. That's the whole area is designated as marine conservation, marine commercial, and part of our charge to the commission is really maintaining the utilization of the property for marine-related activities rather than residences. Very simply put, that's where I come from with this. The commission, we're looking for more access to the harbor all the time, for access to moorings, being able to see the harbor, and developing this dense just hides the harbor from anybody walking down the street other than peeking down a narrow passageway. So I kind of just think it flies in the face of what I feel the commission's charge is.
I think if we go back, Adam, and you look at the history of the Marine Commercial Zone District that was established, according to some of the earlier documents back in 1988, you'll see that the city, not only the city has approved this area as a marine commercial zone, with almost complete access to the harbor, that we're beginning to dwindle our marine districts, even up in the upper portion of the harbor, for building more and more of these small mini condominiums and putting people closer and closer together. In which I think people in this day and age are trying to get farther and farther apart now with the social distancing. I don't know if you could sort of huddle people up together on top of each other, but the original POCD, or the master plan, really called for the importance of maintaining marine commercial districts, and that was sort of carried through in the recent POCD that was just recently revised. And the what we had taken as perhaps a slight oversight by the Planning and Zoning Commission to really include a marine commercial district in that POCD. And it was fortunate that with Jeff Stedman and several of the other commissioners that we picked up on the fact that marine commercial districts were slowly being eroded. Now, whether that was intentional or not quite sure. but I think we had put some very good language in that really stresses the importance of maintaining the waterfront community as such, and not having our waterfront look like the east, sort of the East River, where we have bulkheading up the entire river. Although we have what seem to be in some of your designs, having a few kayakers or boaters in that area right there, but nonetheless, not really sure whether I can agree with some of the designs, but nonetheless, I'm not the the architect involved here, but I think somewhere along the line, a greater thought has to be put into the fact that this should be used for at least some sort of commercial zone privilege. Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
John, oh, go ahead.
No,
Chris McDonald here, sorry.
Yes.
I was just looking at the zoning map. Is 68 water in the Washington Street Design District, or is that in the Marine Commercial?
It's in the Marine Commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking the developer. 68 that's the second lot down from the bridge.
Yeah, it's in the Marine Commercial.
Yes.
It is in the Marine Commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think like the other commissioners said, rezoning Marine Commercial to residential is almost a no-starter from our point of view, even if there's some properties that are underutilized, although you're including both the, where the marine dock is and the restaurant, as well as the yard where GNC Marine and several, there's many marine businesses operating out of the yard. That's, I think, 108, which you included in your letter. I know that's a very active yard there. I'm involved in a small business that does some work out of there. Converting that into, condos or rezoning that as residential is, I don't know how that's in the spirit of the harbor plan.
Well, I think this is Jeff Stedman. I think that, we could always modify the plan if the commission chose to do it, but right now, eliminating that marine commercial district was just clearly inconsistent with the harbor management plan, which supports the marine commercial district there.
Right.
And it's interesting that it's like history repeating itself for some of us who've been around for a long time, because the history of that marine commercial zone goes back to, 1979, 1980, when there were these same sorts of pressures for redeveloping what were considered underutilized waterfront properties, and the Connecticut Coastal Management Act was passed in 1979. And then in 82, the Planning and Zoning Commission at the time, it was one commission, they passed the update to the master plan, which established that marine commercial land use district in that area, from the bridge down to Shorefront Park. And that was essentially half of Norwalk's municipal coastal program that was to give the city a certain amount of more authority to implement coastal management policies. The full coastal management program, which was approved by the state of Connecticut, came in 1988, when the city then approved the marine commercial zoning district there. In fact, I remember going to the public presentation at the Maritime Center, it was called then, when DEP gave its approval for Norwalk's municipal coastal program. So I think that to change the zone there now, without making any in-depth evaluations of what you're proposing, it's just not consistent with the policy of the harbor management plan to maintain that marine commercial use.
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
Mr. Stedman. So just to be clear, there has been an analysis of the uses, and in fact, that's why for most not 108, but the remainder of these properties, they're not marine commercial uses now. You have a restaurant, and what would be proposed would be some restaurant uses facing the water under the redevelopment plans. But those property owners, the remaining property owners, have decided that it doesn't make sense for them to try to put a marine commercial use, particularly because they have limited access to the water there. They can go, I think, one slip deep So they can't make it a marina. There's no money in it for them. They're not going to build, which is why it's stayed underdeveloped for so long. So it wouldn't be that Norwalk is losing marine commercial uses. It would be that on paper, it's losing 5 or 6 lots that from the marine commercial district. But hopefully would it be getting out of it now a much more active waterfront that connects to Washington Street, which is sort of sorely lacking currently.
Right. Yeah, sure. No, I'm not, again, talking too much, but we understand that argument certainly. And when the POCD was being prepared, all the time we put into that, we had asked that as part of the POCD process, there be some sort of analysis of the market conditions affecting water-dependent uses, because the city apparently has the same perspective of the properties along the Upper Harbor, north of the railroad bridge, and that the vision there is not, long-term for industrial commercial uses, but for residential uses with public promenades and public activity centers. Yeah, so we understand. It's the same argument as 40 years ago. The properties are worth a tremendous amount of money, and they're underutilized for marine commercial use, and that's why that marine commercial district was imposed in the first place. And now the question is, has it worked? But to modify that now is something that the DEP would have certainly a significant interest in as implementer or administrator of the Coastal Management Act, and as with the city, as with the Harbor Commission. So I certainly understand the argument.
Adam, let me ask you a question. You said the various property owners. Is it one developer that's looking to put the packages together to create this very beautiful rendering?
No, my client is really the DiNardo family, and they've not partnered up with any of their neighboring property owners on a development plan. Spinnaker, some of the other property owners may, if we proceed with the text change to change the zoning, they very well may come in with a special permit application with the zone change, partnering up. But right now, the discussion has simply been, hey, let's talk with planning, talk with zoning, talk with you folks, try to get some input to see how much essentially resistance there is, and whether they want to go forward with resistance or without, or if there's compromises that can be made to come up with something that's acceptable to everybody. Put that together before they move forward with any kind of a joint development plan.
Yeah, because I know I've gotten a lot of personal feedback from people that are at 108, and that's at the southernmost part of this parcel, and they're all marine use people, and they're going to be displaced. And the question, or what they've been told, is that they can't wait for this zone change to be made, the owner of the property, and informing his tenants that are marine use that they're going to have to leave, because that's going to be his payday.
I don't know what he's talked with the tenants about. I would imagine.
So he's not part of the development. He just wants out of the property, and obviously there's going to be marine use displacement.
On 108, that's the only one where there would be.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm relating to at 108.
Yep. Yeah. Now, and look, obviously the ask is for that to be the zone change area, but if you folks said to me, we love it, but you got to cut out 108, I could go with that, but
right. But right now, I mean, this is not a short-term thing; it's a long-term, because between DiNardo and Fowler, they have working arrangements and agreements with the DOT. They're going to windfall and get some bulkheads put in that they should have been mandated to do and to repair and to replace over the years, and have not. And the state's going to do it on their behalf, which is fine. That's all well and good. But they should try to incorporate something that's going to give and highlight our marine use, what that designated area is. It's not that they bought that property considering a zone change. They bought it understanding what the zone was at that time.
Yeah, but absent boat storage or a true marina, are there other marine commercial uses that you could envision actually working on those properties?
Well, I thought that's what an architectural design or good architectural design would be able to come up with. Am I reading that wrong? I mean, here's you know what the rendering is basically a commercial district, a marine commercial district, and it would be up to perhaps an architect with some ingenuity and creativity to fit the needs of what that area represents.
I mean, a lot of it's cultural too. Over the years, that our history, that whole area is very much a shining part of our Norwalk's commercial history in terms of boating and marine use, and that's why that zone was designated for the expansion of that over time.
Well, that's what
the future.
That's what I'm trying to allude to. The fact that if an architectural design company can come in and be creative in that area for what marine commercial use could be.
Yeah, the zoning regs do spell out what those marine commercial uses could be, and none of them fit. Not for these properties. I mean, 108 has some possibilities, but other than that, they're not there.
How do you mean they're not there?
Well, that's what a design company is supposed to do, isn't it? Maybe I may be reading this wrong.
Well, you're not.
You're putting together a design based on residential, buildings going up to 4 stories for people to live in an area where it seems to be already quite a bit of congestion in that area behind you, rather than keeping open a waterfront district for use for marine purposes expressly. I don't know.
I mean, the Bloom, the Leslie Bloom property where the police marine unit is stationed right now.
That's right at 100, right?
Right. That property, obviously, having a restaurant on the water is great. And then she has probably 10, 12 docks or more just below the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that blends into the, from our perspective also, we have to look at the character of the neighborhood, and the character of expensive apartments in that neighborhood, although would be wonderful and fantastic, doesn't blend to what that area is supposed to be. And it's not like we have 100 different places scattered throughout town. We have one little isolated area that we're kind of like trying to hold close to our vest for our history and to continuation of the marine use.
Well, if I could just interject one part of history. Jeff sent around. We got a letter from it was the Coastal Area Management Program from the state of Connecticut, where they had that meeting that Jeff had alluded to, and I think this paragraph really sums it up. And it was the prior to the presentation that was being made by the Department of Environmental Protection to the city. And it points out that paragraph says the development of Norwalk's municipal coastal program began in 1981, being initiated and completed by the city's Planning and Zoning Commission and staff under the authority of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act. This program, the primary goal of which is the effective management, use, development, and preservation of Norwalk's coastal land and water resources, consists of amendments to the city's plan and development adopted in 1982 and subsequent zoning and regulation changes necessary to implement the plan. The final changes were recently adopted, culminating over 7 years of a dedicated work. From its inception, this program, in conjunction with the state's Coastal Management Act, has resulted in significant gains in protection and enhancement of water-dependent facilities, public access opportunities, and preservation of significant coastal resources. It says now that the program is completed, it will serve an even greater role in guiding future coastal uses and development. I think that sums pretty much up with what our harbor management plan has to say, and what has also been put in the coastal in the plan of POCD.
But John, you know the argument though, and
I understand that.
it's continued that someone could say, well, what good is it because there's no market for the uses that you're trying to protect. So we want to do something else that has another benefit to it. But right now the plan calls for encouraging and supporting water dependent uses, and clearly supports the continuation of the marine commercial district.
That's correct.
Would you mind if I asked just two questions? I really appreciate the time. Maybe you can help us. The proposal by Eversource to bring the electric, the new transmission line through that property, is that a consideration in the future development of this property, or is there anything that you can, sir, that you can tell us as to what the status of that project is?
Shed some light.
What's that?
Shed some light.
Yeah, right. That's right. Because the last we heard is that they were modifying the route to go along the property line of two of the properties that you're proposing to be in this new zoning district, and that by doing so that they would not diminish future development opportunities for those properties. So that sort of implied to us that the planning for Eversource and the planning for redevelopment here are sort of, there's a connection somehow. But maybe I'm wrong. I just wondered if you had any light, you could shed any light on that.
I don't have a great answer. I know that as of a week or two ago, I did speak with Matt at Spinnaker, as well as my client about that issue, and they were getting different answers from Eversource, on every other week, whether exactly where the lines were going to go.
Join the club.
We've been getting. So they're not sure. Eversource may take their properties. Eversource may stage there just temporarily. Eversource may just put the power lines underground. They're really not sure yet, but they don't want to wait around years to sort of find out. So that's why they've asked me to go forward. I do want to let me just point out one thing, and I understand where you guys are all coming from, and I'll relay that to the client and to the rest of the neighbors. But I would just want to point out to you, in the marine commercial zone currently, essentially everything that I've told you is already allowed, just to a lesser degree. The height's different, the density's different. Mixed use apartments are allowed, the restaurants are allowed. The exact developments that I proposed could be done under the current regs, just to a smaller scale. And that, in fact, is why I think there hasn't been development to date.
Yeah. Now, but of course, this issue is recently, Stamford has had a big issue with this, and the Harbor Point development and the potential impact on water-dependent uses in Stamford and in Greenwich. Just recently, there's a proposal by the town to change the zoning regulations along the Coscob Harbor area. So yeah, it's the same issue. And I'll stop talking maybe. But why isn't that property at the top, just south of the Straffolino Bridge? Why haven't you included that in your proposed zone change?
I believe, and if it's not, we would end up including it. But my understanding is that that's already out of the marine commercial zone. That's part of the SSDD district.
That's part of the historic district. The first couple of properties on South Water Street, Jeff.
The top there.
50, yeah, the blue
I didn't know. I'll check on that. I didn't know that. I thought that. Anyway,
it's part of the historic district.
Okay, I'll look at that.
All right. So I think I've gotten feedback from you guys, and so unless there's more, I think I know what I can relay.
And then you also know that one of those properties that you're talking about is also the property that the DOT presented to us as a potential relocation site for the passenger boats that we were talking about earlier in the discussion. I mean, it was raised as a concept, and of course that would mean that the proposal for putting together the bridge parts as now exists would have to be moved elsewhere if the boats were to be relocated there for a temporary period of time. So there's a lot of things being, thought about here, from the bridge construction plans to Eversource to now this discussion about changing the zoning. It's quite interesting.
All right. Adam, I'd like to thank you very much for bringing us forward with this and reviewing this project with us. Other than that, I don't think there's really any particular comment that the commission needs to make, on that. It was just certainly a point of information from our standpoint. And but I thank you very much for bringing that forward and discussing those items with us.
Great. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Adam.
you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
Be well.
Bye.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes our discussion and application review.
Thank God, because your microphone sounds crazy. So
I can't imagine why. I don't know what that's.
let's continue on to our regular meeting. Brian, if you can, please unmute everyone that's on the call, please.
Sure thing.
Did we take about 5 minutes, John? Or
Yeah, 5 minutes, please.
2
All right, a
minutes?
little 5-minute break you want?
Yeah.
All right, do a
Yeah,
5-minute
please.
break.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, how you doing? I heard
Good,
we had
good.
some movement on that abandoned vessel, huh? You had a mooring dropped?
Yeah. I had Norm Edwards bring me out a mushroom, 1,000-pound mushroom.
Yeah.
And and the what's his name, Jeff Spar, the city attorney, and Jimmy Walsh, and all those guys were involved. And the only reason I get it, and I told him, I said, I don't need, not that I don't want, but I said, I don't need your involvement. But the only reason is because it's actually tied to city property. I said, if that thing didn't have lines touching it, I said, I wouldn't need your involvement at all. I would have done what I needed to do. But because it's, on the city property and I don't regulate the docks, they got involved, which is fine.
Yeah. No, I actually had my haircut this afternoon with Jimmy and Sal and
okay.
the Wallow. So I got the update. That's how I got the update.
Yeah. The guy's a real shitbag.
Yeah.
A real shitbag. You know, his thing was, and I asked him, you know, who gave you permission? I don't need permission. I'm a Norwalk resident. I can do whatever I want. The docks belong to me. Nobody can make me pay. Blah 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 blah. On and on and on. So there's no reasoning with the guy. And then, you know, his answer always is, "Go fuck yourself. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Fuck off." I'm like,
Well,
all
the
right,
funny
you know.
the funny part was that Jimmy told me that the fire department helped them tie up the boat.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fire department are jackasses. I'm sorry, my brother's a fireman, but they're wannabe cops is what they are. So they have no calls for service. They always say that, you know, they're out on patrol. It's like a fireboat doesn't do patrol. What
Right.
legally, the fireboat cannot stop anybody and ask for life jackets, ask for anything. They're not law enforcement.
Right.
They can't even speed out of the channel. And the way the statute reads throughout the whole country is the only boats that are allowed to speed through a channel are boats that have blue lights on, which are two, law enforcement and the Coast Guard. Fireboat has yellow lights. They can't do it. They could be, you know, ticketed or whatever you want to say. Nobody would, but they can't. And it pisses them off that I would always fly out of there and they can't. Well, you're not a police boat. You're a fireboat. So they're so mad that their hands are tied, you know, because they're only a fireboat. And what they've been doing for years is they listen to the radio. They're ambulance chasers. So
Right.
they would show up down in Greenwich and Westport. Westport told them, "You come in our waters one more time and we will arrest you." But they would just randomly you hear somebody on channel 16, and even Greenwich is like, "What the fuck are you doing down here?" Well, we heard the call come in. We didn't ask for your help. But,
They're CETO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, no. Towing a boat in is beneath them. They just want to go and for the action. And I told him, I said, listen, 99% of boating calls are police calls. Well, what do you mean? I said, it's just like traffic on the road. 99% of the calls are police calls, whether it's an accident, whether it's a violation, whatever it is, it's police related. Same thing on the water. If a boat broke down, if it hit something, if it hit another boat, if it's an accident or they're drunk, it's a police matter. I said, if the boat's on fire, we used to have the fire hose on our boat, and all we would do is would fill the boat up until it sank. That's how you put the boat out. You're not going to save it, you know. But they're so mad because they want to be more than what they are, and it kills them. But getting back to that, yeah. So they basically fucked us. They gave this guy an escort all the way in from Darien or Stanford, and escorted him in and brought it in and helped him tie it up.
Yep. Well,
Nice, huh?
we're on a public line here, so we need to.
Yeah. No. I understand. But the bottom line is, we did get that boat out of there. He's stationed. The paperwork has been done through the DEP. I believe May 25th is the deadline of it. So we'll see what happens then. You know, rightfully so, he can go out and take it and move it.
All right.
It's basically a storage anchor.
I make it sure that we're back on the meeting right now.
Oh.
And the discussion is because we're under some time constraints too.
Yeah. But that's basically all my update is for my.
Okay, now where does the burden for the mooring that was created? Who does that fall
on? Well, Norman did me a favor by bringing it out there. It's not permanent. He told me, he said, I can only give it to you for a couple of weeks because he needs it. So it's
okay,
just,
so that was a mooring he already had.
Correct. It's from his yard that he brought out there.
Okay, so we're not paying for the dropping of the mooring, or
no, he did that as a favor for me.
Okay, and then but I'm sure you'll be able to bill it.
Yeah. He's got a bill that he's run up from being on the city docks to begin with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to report to the commission that based on this situation, there has to be a hearing officer, and the mayor has appointed me as the hearing officer should this become litigious, where the owner of the boat now wants to appeal the decisions and what was made. So I've been appointed by the mayor to represent the city as their hearing officer, and that's a 2-year appointment. Just as an awareness to everyone. So we did the harbor master abandoned vessel report. You want to enhance your report, Greg, on any other goings on in the harbor?
That's really the only thing that's been happening so far. You know, with the not too many boats out there yet. The loading ramps is still, as far as I know, being done by appointment, and between 10 and 2 on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I've got a few people that have called me, another one today, with a sailboat that wants to put in an application. He hasn't purchased the boat yet, so I told him new application. There is no deadline for it. So I'll keep an eye out for that one.
I think I sent them to you, Greg.
What's that?
This is Dennis. I think I sent them to you. Norris is his name?
No, this was another guy, Parkman or something.
Okay.
Peter Harkman, or I forget the name.
Doesn't matter. I thought it was the other fellow.
Yeah, and then I've been back and forth with Norm to try and get the inspections logged in. I guess he's under 2 emails, so some of the inspections he can get in, some aren't. And I told him we're just going to try and do a 3-way call with Jen and get him all cleaned up, and this way he can get into all the moorings that he needs to, because I'm not, there's a few of them, quite a few that we can't approve because it needs the mooring inspection. Yeah, and it needs the mooring inspection. Now Norm's told me he's done those moorings. I've brought, given the names. He goes, I've done those, but he can't get in the system to sign off on them. And we can't. I've tried to get into the system. I can't get into it to verify it and whatnot. So Jen said we'll do a 3-way and delete his old email or whatnot, and then as long as she has my permission, she said she can tie in all those under him, and then we can get those completed.
Have we made any inroads on the planning of having the transient moorings and
Nothing.
And the locations of them and what the cost would be?
No, I haven't heard anything. We've got no plans for it or anything. I thought the city, somebody up there had to make a decision on that. I thought.
No, I think we have the funds that are allocated, Tony Mobilia.
Yes, the funds are allocated. We've got a line.
Oh, okay.
So we have funds. The city approved it.
They did approve it. Okay, perfect.
We explained it to the finance people.
However, we don't have too much money at the moment, so.
No, we don't have. I mean, we don't have a lot of money, but
Just sent in $4,000.
At the end of the day, we have the ability to do it. It's just for you now to locate the areas that would be appropriate to have that, and then we need to.
I would say the areas that I was thinking before are near Cove Marina, and obviously near the Water Street side. Within not too far from the loading ramps area and whatnot. So at least Cove Marina, there's a restaurant there. There's the beach there if they want. And then at least if they come down, as close as we can towards like South North Boat Club, Water Street, the Sono restaurant, in that area to get them down on Washington Street, I think that would be most practical.
It'd be nice if you could recognize those areas so we could discuss it next month and get them.
Okay. And then obviously, maybe some farther out in the channel that somebody doesn't want to come in. They just, passing between ports, if you want to say, and just want to tie up overnight and then go from there so they don't have to come all the way into the channel.
Yeah, but we need to develop the mechanism of how they're going to do that. And my assumption would be Parks and Recs.
I think you want to be sure that those are full swing moorings rather than a front and back arrangement, because if you're not used to the front and back, it's
right. I would say just a single mooring. A single mooring would be it. But the problem is we have to try and develop a way to find out who's on it, so somebody just doesn't come up and tie onto it and we don't know about it.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
yeah, the reservations we could do through DACWA. That's what the 5 Mile River Commission does. And it's we use that all the time when we're traveling on our boat to reserve docks and moorings and all that. It just bills a credit card. It's taken care of. The information goes to somebody like you, Greg, I think, so you know that it's occupied. The only difficulty you have is when somebody just ties up on it and somebody's paid for it and shows up.
Paid for it, right? Okay.
But
Well, we'll have to attach a phone number to it or something like that, or some kind of placard on it that's attached to it somehow. Say this is a transient dock. You must call such and such number prior to tying onto this. So at least they can't say, "Oh, I didn't know that."
It should be labeled transient city of Knoll.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, and have some type of placard on it that hangs off of it, so they don't come back and say, "Well, there was nothing on there. I didn't see anything on there." Well, it'll be on there. Whether it's one of those little mooring flags that they put on there, with a lobster buoy and the flag on it, that we can put something on that. But we'll sit down and figure it out what we can do to at least notify.
If you could have the ball, painted a different color, that's always a good, giveaway to harbor that there's 2 or 3 of them that they have some assigned purpose rather than just being left behind.
Dennis, I know we've had some issues with access to City Hall, getting the mail.
I was going to mention it in my report, but it's closed, as everybody knows. They won't let me in to get up to the mailbox. I don't know. I know of a couple checks that I was told were mailed to City Hall, and I don't know how to get them if they're there.
Not to interrupt you, but Norm Edwards told me he's got the check from Sprite Island, like 2/3 of it. I don't know if you guys received that yet.
Sprite Island?
Yeah. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. Was it? No, wait. Was it Sprite Island?
I already got.
He's got row 8 and yacht club. I know it's the first half.
I already got row 8 yacht.
You did. Okay. Yep. He mentioned that.
I deposited that yesterday.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Sprite Island, and one of the applicants had submitted his mooring fee by check. So again, I haven't seen it. I don't know where it is. I checked with planning and zoning. They have nothing in their office. So I don't know if anybody's tending to our mailbox.
Ryan,
Matt Gifford is here.
Planning and zoning.
Yeah, usually any mail that comes to you guys comes to our office. So I've been emailing Steve to make sure that you guys don't have any checks laying around, and he said nothing. Just one letter, I think, for you, John.
I know there were like 2 or 3 different things that were sent by the state and this, that, and the other thing. And then what was City Hall access with everything, except if you want to go pay your taxes, it's been kind of like...
That's easy.
Shut down. So access hasn't been that forthcoming.
I'll try reaching out to...
do me a favor, have somebody root around a little bit.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the building management guys and see what they're doing.
Yeah, tell them they can open up our mail and let us know if there's anything important there, to call me personally, please.
All right.
Ryan, do you know if anyone is actually checking our mailbox?
Well, so what they always do is the mail guy comes around and he drops everything off for you guys in our office. So we always have someone, Steve's either there or Alexis is there. So we always have somebody there to receive the mail. And they haven't seen anything.
Prior to that, they were delivering it to our mailbox. Somehow it got down to planning and zoning, and I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
Well, have somebody check our mailbox as well, please.
Okay.
And then grab that, whatever's there, and let's let planning and zoning be the focal point for us to go into.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Jeff Stedman. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It's hard to hear you. I don't
needs
have.
to put mute on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is there anything that you need to input or bring up?
No, but I just confirm what Alan said earlier when we were talking about the zoning proposal, that the property just to the south of the Stropolino Bridge on Water Street is part of the Washington Street Design District. It's not in the Marine Commercial District.
That's Wilmot's property?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see much happening there. I mean, they've got that, office buildings there. They have the retail out front. They have parking under the building. It's a stilted building. So And I
No,
think that's-
I don't have anything else to report. I did listen to the Connecticut Port Authority's meeting last week, which I guess it was better than driving out to New London to listen to it. But they accepted the grant applications for that Small Harbor Improvement Project program, and those were grant applications that were submitted by municipalities, I guess, over a year ago, and that action on them was put on hold when the issues with the Port Authority materialized. But they did vote on approving 10 applications last week. Norwalk had 2 applications that were submitted, but neither was approved for reasons that we knew, I guess, ahead of time. But right now there's no the Port Authority has no permission from the governor to seek the funds from the bond commission for those small harbor projects.
Okay.
And hopefully that program will continue. Hopefully the program will continue in the future, and we could make another submittal. But the submittals that were not made by the Harbor Commission. They were made by other agencies in the city. But they weren't selected for funding.
Okay. Shellfish Commission. What you got going on, Stevie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick. So on the 52 Shorefront Park project, Deep had a meeting with the local shareholders there. The Shellfish Commission did not take part. But as we understand, John, the Harbor Management Commission is deferring to the Shellfish Commission in terms of recommendations.
Yes.
We had submitted our formal consultation form. Just important to note, this is another property that did not have a formal survey. Mr. Hiltz is the agent for same. So the commission supports staking the proposed structure's footprint. That's something that there's precedent for, very recent precedent for. So we would like to make that recommendation. We'd also like to thank Captain Norman Bloom for the first clam transplantation of the season to recreational beds. Recreational shellfishing is currently open in Norwalk, but it is closed at Calf Pasture Beach and Shady Beach until further notice. Lastly, that DOT meeting with respect to the recreational or the excursion vessels, rather, the Shellfish Commission didn't attend, but we wholeheartedly support the authority of Harbor Master Scully, Lieutenant Sheehy of the Coast Guard, and Sergeant Lepak of the Norwalk Police to have the authority on this and make the correct decision in terms of safety. The Shellfish Commission is meeting at 7:15 p.m. this Thursday. Eat Norwalk shellfish, and I yield back. Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, shellfish.
Thank you.
That business, that industry has been hit tremendously because I'm going to say probably 95% of their business is the restaurants.
There is no wholesale market right now,
Right.
John. Correct.
And you know, shellfish are not something that you're going to buy to take out. It's eaten on premises.
Yeah. Especially oysters.
Yeah, and those guys need as much support as we can, you know, ourselves give on a peripheral way.
Thank you.
Okay. Dennis,
I took it a dozen home
to your
storms last
report?
Yes, Chris, you wanted to say something?
No, I just said I took a dozen home from Norm's last week, so
Thank you.
you know, you can still support them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I think they're inviting people to come down there if they want to purchase product.
Yeah, they have a great shipment program too. I just sent about 20 packages out from California to Washington, D.C. and everyone between.
Great.
Norman was walking in front of my house the other day. I was talking to him and his son Jimmy, and he said that Monday, March the 16th was the first day in his known history that they did not get one order. all day.
Wow.
So I guess he had to lay off about 50 some odd people the following Tuesday, Wednesday, and keep enough guys to kind of turn his beds and keep things moving, since they do so much farming as opposed to just clamming and oystering. But yeah, they're in a pretty rough
The
situation.
day that I got my shot in the back of the head, I wound up losing 500,000 that day because I had to close down a very viable restaurant because I couldn't do business anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, Mr. Mobilia,
Oh,
finance.
you have the mooring committee. Mr. Chairman.
Do you have a report, Dennis?
Oh,
Yes, I
Dennis,
do.
you deferred your time
Oh, he
to
deferred.
Matt.
No, I didn't do that.
Okay.
I could if you'd like. Anyway, as you can imagine, there's been less activity with the renewals of applications for the past few months as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. We have 27 approved applications and 45 renewals that are under review. I received 2 first payments for the managed fields. One was Rowayton and the other one was Norwalk. And I was going to talk about the checks that we just recently talked about, so I'm not going to get into that, so we all know what's going on there. I received an email, and I sent an email to our chairman and Tony Mobilia regarding this. I received an email from our online mooring people, and they're recommending a change to a new program they call Stripe. This new program will make it easier for the applicants to make their payments online, and the Harbor Commission will receive the fee quicker and in a more organized format. So if we're just making a decision on whether we want to do that, it could happen at any time. We could start it mid-season right now, or we could wait. I would recommend we start it, seeing it makes it easier for the applicants to make payments. That's always been an issue. I'd have to talk to controller or Tony to see, we'd have to set up an account for Stripe, and we need to know what the mechanics are of that. And
Yeah.
so,
We'd have
you know,
to
that's
talk
something
to the city, yeah.
So I'm not sure myself at this point what the details are of that, but that needs to be followed up. Also, there's going to be an increase on the online payment fee by 20.25%. So if we have a $100 application fee, the online payment will go up by 25 cents. This is part of the increase is direct. It goes from the online mooring payment gateways. In other words, they're large companies charge more, so they're going to pass it along to us. So that's basically how it arrived. Basically, that's all I have on the mooring committee. I just have a request under the harbor safety. If there's an issue in the harbor, and I don't know if Greg is still with us or not, but I would like to be informed of what's going on, because I don't really like to read it. Seeing I'm supposed to be in charge of harbor safety, I should at least be aware of what's going on in case I'm questioned or it comes up through an email or somebody asks me. That's all I ask. I don't need to get too involved unless you want me to, but just let me know what's going on, especially if there's an issue like what's happened. And that's not the one that we've encountered. So
Are you talking about the abandoned boat?
Yes.
Dennis? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, anything that you think is harbor safety
Dennis,
or I should need to know about it, I would appreciate
okay.
calls to keep me up to date.
That's easy enough.
And John, Jeff Stedman again, but also with respect to the vessel relocation plans, the harbor safety.
Yeah, I was
committee-
invited to that meeting and I couldn't make that meeting.
My opinion, the harbor safety committee should also be a participant in those meetings.
Well, let's put it this way. All the stuff that that Greg had mentioned that I had brought up, I found out about at 3:45 this afternoon, only because I was getting a haircut with a couple of police guys that had arranged to get haircuts. And Jimmy Walsh happened to be there. So I wound up with getting information that Greg was going to share with us later.
Hey, John, no disrespect.
I should have been.
John, no disrespect, but I can't tell you have a haircut.
Say again? Oh,
I can't
do
tell
it
you
like
how
an
to
haircut?
haircut.
Wait, let me change the
Yeah,
camera.
we're at our 5-minute warning, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
5-minute warning, right?
Okay, so. let's
Mr.
move-
Chairman, that ends my report.
Okay, Tony Mobilia?
Yeah,
Treasurer?
quickly in finance, in March, which seems like such a long time ago, Chairman Romano and I met with the Board of Estimate and Taxation on our grant, and they were very receptive. Everything seemed positive. But as
You're
of
a butt
today, I
coming,
don't know
Tony.
what's going on. I guess we'll find out shortly when they come through with their reports, their decisions.
All right,
As of today, let me just put this on. These are our finances. Hold on. Shoot. You know what? It says only the host can share this in this meeting. Can you share this?
Here, let me go ahead now, Tony.
Okay. There we go. Okay, these are our finances as of today, May 4th, actually yesterday. We started out at the beginning since 3/9, $11,076. We had checks in from the Norwalk Yacht Club, Rowayton Yacht Club. We had interest. Online Mooring sent us a check and twice. So our income was 9,766. Our expenditures, as you can see, we paid Tom Hart, we paid Greg, we paid Jeff, and Jeff's payment is only the first half of 19. We still have to pay the second half for our consultant services. So totally, we had $13,835.29. So our fund balance as of today is $7,006.75.
And our next advance would be after July 1st?
Our advance would be from July 1st, but we're still, I guess some mooring holders are still coming in. I believe, Dennis, those checks from Rowayton and Norwalk are half, the first half.
They're the first payment, yes.
Yeah, those are the first payments.
Right,
So we
Alan's first
expect
payment.
those in.
Yeah, Jeff, I would encourage you to get your bill in so we can get that squared away and as the resources are there, please.
Tony, I'd like to make a point on your financial here, just to clarify what I had said earlier in my report.
Yeah,
We have an online mooring 316 and 416, 830. No, I'm sorry. I'm go down to one online LLC, down to expenses. The 110
expenses. Yeah.
110.66 and the 104.28 is where the increase of 0.25% is going to take place.
That's where it's going to take place, but it isn't in there yet.
No, it doesn't happen until July 1st.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Thank you, Tony. Plans and recommendations. Jeff, what I would ask you to do, please, if you can, because of time constraint, is do a written report and disseminate it out to the commission.
All right. Yep. Yeah, I will.
Also, newsletter and website, Alan, if you could do a written report and disseminate it out and put in there what your ask is going to be.
Yes.
Okay. Joe Schneiderlein is not here anymore, so
I am.
I don't see you.
I can't help that, John.
I can see him.
He's there.
That's good. It's very
Joe
kind.
was kind enough to send a written report earlier today. Thank you very much.
Hey, John,
I'll send you my report if you want it.
Yeah, please.
John, one quick thing about that I want to point out. And it's critical to us at this time. With the COVID-19, I had put in a request to the Department of Health as well as Department of Agriculture and to the mayor to find out if sewage treatment would take care of COVID-19 getting into the waters, of Long Island Sound. And apparently, I have not heard back from any of them. Aquaculture said They're looking into it. I did see an article in a newspaper today indicating that as long as the sewage is treated, we should be good. If the sewage is not treated, for example, when we get spills, it's not good. And live viruses will then get out into the shellfish beds.
Joe, let me ask you a question. At the water treatment plant, do we have on the discharge when they do the overflow for storm scenarios, do we have ultraviolet?
No, we have chlorination.
Correct.
Just
And that's-
solely chlorination.
Right.
So what we should do is try to make a statement that we're kind of going to request because of our shellfish areas and all that. Then that's something we can discuss further on Thursday, that we put an ultraviolet unit in there.
If they, having both would actually be wonderful.
Yeah.
And you can read the rest of the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Bridges, there's no report other than what's already been stated. Public comment, there is no public on the call, so the approval of the minutes, any issues with the minutes and any change, any corrections or anything on the minutes? Having heard none.
Yep.
Do I get a motion to accept the minutes as read?
Move.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Make a motion.
Okay, anybody opposed? So moved.
Stay well, everyone.
A motion to adjourn?
Yeah, one last thing, John.
Common council
Make a
meeting?
motion.
John,
Hold on.
one last thing.
Say
We
again?
have to introduce Matt Gifford. This is his first meeting with the commission.
Well,
Yes,
yes,
Matt Gifford.
Matt is here. Matt is, if you want to give us a 30-second rendition of who the hell you are.
Nicely put, John.
I thought you, John, were the one who did my my intro for the mayor, but no,
I did.
I'm a Marvin Beach resident down in East Norwalk, right on Norwalk Harbor, looking out my window here and seeing how many barges are coming towards our new walk bridge. But just happy to be part of the group, and whatever I can do to help you guys out. I'm also involved with whether it be Spread Island or East Norwalk Boat Club or member of South Norwalk. So feel free to peck on me.
He's on the
for anything you guys
committee
need.
with Jeff also, so.
Matt, John Pinto here. Would you be kind enough to send me your email address?
Oh yeah, sure.
I'll give you mine. It's PINT.
No, I think I've got it here, and I just shot Scully. I just shot you a note, just so that
Who's gonna make a motion to adjourn?
I am. Make a motion.
Seconded, so moved.
Second,
Thank
so
you very
moved.
much, Brian. I'm sorry we went 5 minutes
That's
over.
all right.
but
You're good.
we got a 10-minute buffer.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian,
Thanks,
thank you.
gentlemen.
Brian.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.